today is going to be a review, catch up, and get us our brains back into the story, because I had to do that. Otherwise, I pick you up and I say, okay, here he is, and this is what he's doing. You're going to go, I have no idea. So that's what we're going to do today. We're going to do the timeline. There's a timeline on your top of your page, and as I give you the dates, the years of things, every time I look at a source of information, they give me a slightly different date. So that you can say that the council in Jerusalem, the Jerusalem Council, when they decided what's required for salvation, is at 49. Next guy goes, nope, it was at 48. The next guy goes, nope, it was at 50. So I am doing my best to put a timeline together that at least makes sense to me. There's a few places on that timeline that are sure. Like, if it happened before Nero burned Rome, then I know it's before 54. Okay? If it happened before Jerusalem fell, we know that's in 70. So there's some standard timelines that help a little bit on things like that. So we know that Paul and Peter were executed before Jerusalem fell, so we know that happened in the late 60s. So all the time, the dates, keep them somewhat soft in your mind as to what, if you read someone else, that's what's going to happen. They're all over the place. Everybody's all over the place. So there's that. And so there's that. The light brown line going across the top, that's who is the emperor at the time of things going on. And that does make a difference as it goes on. The second line is who is ruling in the area of Judea. Okay, so who is the local ruler in the area of Judea at certain times? So like during the life of Christ, we have Pilate, and during the next time when Caligula was the emperor, we have King Agrippa the First, and he's going to come into our story. So we kind of have to know what's going on. And the third line is the high priest. I've been keeping kind of close track on those high priests, but you guys aren't going to care. So I didn't try to put all the names. One thing you should know is that they're pretty much all related. And they also buy their positions. So they bribe to get their positions, and they're very wealthy, and that's how they get their positions. And there's conflict usually between the second line and the third line. So whoever's ruling in Judea on the Roman side is in conflict or in cahoots with the high priest. Just little things going on. As we get into the story, what's going on in the culture around them makes a huge difference. You could tell our story, and if there was, during the time of the fire in Calaveras County, 7 or 8, 10 years ago, whatever that was, that changed all of our activities for around. So if you were trying to look, you need to know what's going on in the time around. If there's why things certain happen and why people respond different ways in the little tiny pieces of information you get in the New Testament, you're going to need to kind of know what the background is. So that's kind of what I've been trying to put together. As we leave Acts, as we travel through and we get to the end of Acts, it is like a giant matrix for me to figure out what's going on where and who's doing what. And most of the time what I've had to do, just given, these are my caveats or whatever you call it when I'm telling, through the epistles. As you read through the epistles, usually at the very beginning or at the very end, you get all this little information about what's going on where. Timothy is gone here, and he just got out of jail. So I didn't know Timothy was in jail. Where did it say Timothy was in jail? But he's just been released. So, he's in jail somewhere. And Titus goes here, and so-and-so goes to Dalmatia, and this and that. Pretty soon you've got all this stuff going on, and that's how I'm trying to figure out this puzzle. So it's been quite an adventure for me to put the pieces together. The other thing that I've used, besides the little tiny things in the epistles, is church tradition, church history. So like, according to church history, Matthew wrote the book of Matthew while he was in Antioch. That's in church history. And they have come up with things like this. So that's my best plan on putting stuff together. And if that has stood for, all these years, then who am I to argue about that stuff? And really, I'm just trying to put a storyline together. So that's what that is. So I just thought I'd tell you about the timeline. We are picking up at 52 as of tomorrow, as of next week, at year 52. Okay, so this today is going over all this stuff. So as of next week, the whole timeline's going to slide. We got that, and we're going to move it on. So the other thing we need to know is the geography, and of course, I forgot to bring my note. So I'm going to try to do this. We'll see. This is going to somewhat be Turkey. This is going to somewhat be the Mediterranean. Here is Africa. We're going to go over here. Here is, that's not a very good Greece. Okay? We got to have an isthmus right here. And there's islands all over the place. And then we're going to go over here, and then we have food. You guys see it? And then we go here to Spain. Actually, this hits way down here, and this hits way up here. So there's my rough map of the Mediterranean, and that will somewhat help us.
That's good.
Is it anywhere close? But yeah. So this is my. Okay, that's far over. This is my sign of Egypt. The Delta and the Nile River. And over here is, and it's going to look really tiny compared to all this, but that's the Dead Sea, and there's Sea of Galilee. Okay? So that's kind of, that's actually further south, now that I see it. It's down here. I should fix that. Ooh. Otherwise, when I tell you how far Paul has to walk, you can go, that doesn't look pretty far. Okay, there you go. That's not a very good map. Nancy knows better.
Well, I know if I swam in the Red Sea.
Yes. I noticed you cannot drown in the Red Sea, because you cannot get under. Yeah. So that's our map, and we are going to start here, and Jesus' instructions were to go into Jerusalem, which is right here, about right there, and then into Judea, which is the area around that, and then into Samaria, which is sort of the area between the Dead Sea and the Sea of Galilee, and then to the world. Okay, so that's the outline, basic outline of the book of Acts is how they do that. Here is an important place, right here. It's about right here. Maybe this is probably more flourish. Anyway, here's some important places. This is Antioch. That's an important place. And about right here is Damascus. And right about here is Tarsus. Right about here is Ephesus. Here's Philippi. Here's Thessalonica. This doesn't come out of this. Here's Athens. Here's Corinth, and that's as far as we've gotten so far in our story. So we haven't gotten to Rome yet, and Rome's food is not that fat. Just saying. There's a cute little island right out here, kind of goes, kind of looks like a, I don't know, bug with a tail. And that's Cyprus, and no, yes, Crete, Cyprus, yes. Okay. All right, so this is we've traveled all these places so far. So this is our review of where we're going. You guys all know this, but I just thought I'd put it up there. And hey, okay, so then there's important to understand a little bit about Greek culture. You remember the Greek word for Greek is Hellen. Hellene. Okay, so Hellenism is a person who has started to follow Greek cultures. Okay, that and it helped me to understand why it had such a weird name. And the weird name is because that is their name for themselves. This Hellene is for Greek. And so that's, if you go there, you will see that around and you'll see it, and it's interesting. Oh yeah, so that really is their name. So that was kind of cool. The Jewish culture right now is, at the time of Christ and the time after, is very intense as Messiah is coming. Even though they didn't recognize Jesus, it's really there. We've already gone through the Hasmoneans, we've gone through the revolt. We've had Antiochus Epiphanes come in from Alexander the Great. You guys remember this? And he wanted to set up the statue in the temple, and he was going to put Zeus right on top of the altar, and it started a revolution, and the Hasmonean Wars took place as the Maccabees, and all that took place, and it started a train of thought that they are going to defend their homeland until Messiah comes, and Messiah is going to come, and when he comes, he's going to wipe those people out. And that's how they view him. He is going to rescue his people, and he is going to get rid of the Romans. He's going to get rid of the Seleucids, the other people who are ruling their country and imprisoning and governing the Jewish people. They're going to have their own kingdom, and then he's going to set up his kingdom, and he's going to rule. Between about 30, 40 years before Christ was born and the fall of Jerusalem, Messiahs have come and come and come and come and come and come and come. All over the place. Guy says, I know I'm the Messiah. So he's going to gather a bunch of people around him. He's going to go east of the Jordan into the wilderness, and he's going to be a voice crying in the wilderness, and he's going to collect the people around him, and they are going to charge the Antonia fortress that's right next to the temple, and they are going to take out Rome. And it doesn't matter if they have a smaller force than the Romans, because, oh, look at the Maccabees, they ate it, and it came across like that. That happened over and over and over and over and over again. And so the Zealots are starting to do this, and they are called actually Sicarii, which is the name of their weapon. So if you were there and you were doing archaeological stuff, it would be called Sicarii, because that's the name of their weapon. They are the Sicarii. Several of those guys were named Jesus. Okay, so when Jesus comes, that's a real fairly common name. When Jesus comes, they go, okay, which Jesus? Who are you? Jesus from where? Who are you? And who are you? You know, where are your people? And several times throughout the story, if you're reading all the story that's not in the Bible and you're going through, you'll go, okay, 3,000 of them were killed that day because the Romans won and they put down the revolt. And another revolt happens in 15 years, and 5,000 are killed that day, and the Romans win and they put down the revolt. And that's going on over and over and over. And the closer we get to 70 AD, the worse it gets. It gets very, very frequent, because they are going to get rid of the Romans. And that's just the mindset. And if you look at it from that viewpoint, you can see two things. If I'm playing devil's advocate, you can see that if you're the average person and you've heard the Messiah stories, all this, and Jesus the Messiah goes, I'm the Messiah. You go, yeah, right. You know, we've had a lot of Messiah stories. On the other hand, if you're the other side is, oh yes, let's charge in. Let's take out the Romans. Let's set it up. I mean, I can almost picture that's what Judas was doing. You know, he was going like, how come you're not moving? This is the time. Let's get this going. Let's get this on the board. Let's create this thing. And here you are, you know, you're dumping tables over. What's that got to do with winning over the Romans, you know? So if you're going to do that, and then at the same time, there's Jesus telling them the truth. Okay, so that's what's going on in people's minds. So that's a little bit of the culture. So I've already kind of covered the history at the same time and the rulerships. So let's jump down to the New Covenant and the Old Covenant. This is a big thing that happens between the Old Testament and the New Testament. And so it's innate in man to say, this is our natural thing, to create a standard of what he calls good, live up to that standard of what he calls good, and then declare that he's righteous, that he's a good man. That's the standard. You create a standard and you do what you think is right and you declare you're a good man. That's what Cain did. He created a standard. He said, okay, my sacrifice is the good sacrifice. I'm going to give my good sacrifice. And so therefore I'm good. And Abel said, I'm going to do what, and I'm assuming here, my dad taught me, that God taught him, and offer the sacrifice from that viewpoint. Okay, so it's not really about the content of the sacrifice, it's about the people. So creating your own standard isn't going to make it. So here's the Old Covenant. I'll change that. Oh, now I'm good. Here's the New Covenant. So God gives the Israelites a covenant, and he gives them more than one, but the Old Covenant technically refers to the Mosaic Covenant, the Ten Commandments, and those rules. There's also the Abrahamic Covenant, which supersedes it and is a different category of covenant. But at the moment, if you're going to compare the New Covenant, which is technically what the New Testament is, because testament and covenant are the same words, you're comparing it to the Mosaic Law and the New Testament. That's the comparison. And this one, God creates a standard, and it is holiness. That's our standard, and it's going to be God's standard of what this is. It says in Leviticus, you are to be holy as I am holy. And if they take all these rules and they obey, because in your own mind, when you create your own standard, one person's standard is here and one person, this is what our culture is today. It's very much, I'm going to create my own truth and live up to my own truth and define my own goodness, and God will accept me because I decided I'm good. And God says, no, that's what happened back in Adam and Eve. It's been there from the beginning and from Cain and Abel. So he creates a standard, and the standard is called holiness, and you are to reach that standard, man, oh, here it's green, obeys the rules. And then, within a month, they break all the rules. And between getting the standard, and it's about a month away, and they have an idol that's called the golden calf, and along with that goes all kinds of other sins, because the way golden calves were worshipped was kind of like the way the Greeks worshipped. Okay? So it's really, so here's the Israelites doing that, while Moses is getting the details on how to build the tabernacle. And so the ended up problem is the standard is perfect. The rules are perfect. Man can't do it. But he thinks he can, because he thinks he can always live up to his own standard. So the whole entire Old Testament is, they do well, they fail. God rescues them, they go on for a bit, they fail. God rescues them, they go on for a bit, they fail. And it goes on and on and on and on. And we look at Israel and we go, how come you guys can't figure it out? Just look at the United States. How come we can't figure it out? It's the exact same thing. Look at any other nation in history. How come the Babylonians couldn't figure it out? How come Rome couldn't figure it out? How come Greece couldn't figure it out? All of them. Mankind can't figure it out. So God gives over and over and over and over. And he told them at the beginning, if you fail, this is what's going to happen. It's going to get bad. Next round, it's going to be 7 times worse. Next round, this is Leviticus, 7 times worse. Next round, 7 times. Finally, it gets down to, down here, there's going to be a point when you reach the max down, and I will take you out. And that's the exile. On the eve of the exile, like within a year of being taken out, where Babylon is already starting to surround the city, and they are at the very bottom, and they are saying, by the way, oh, we have the temple, we have the temple, we have the temple, we are holy, we are holy, we are holy. And in that temple, they're worshiping Ashtarti, they're worshiping the stars and the astrology, we're doing everything wrong, and there's inside the temple, with all of that kind of activity going on, which is very sexual, by the way. Okay? That's in the temple grounds. And Jeremiah is standing up there saying, this is not right. And they go, you are so wrong, Jeremiah. And they're rejecting him, and they're rejecting him, and he's trying to take them back to the standard. And they're saying, no, we can do our own standard. And that's the story of mankind on the whole. At that moment, God gives Jeremiah a new covenant. I just think the timing of it is just divine, which it is, obviously, but it kind of blows my mind we're at you have reached the max, and you're going to crash hard, and I'm going to give you a new covenant. The standard of the new covenant is holiness. Really cool. And you go, so what? Right? We still can't do it. Okay, so here's the thing. He's going to change the heart. He's going to give us a new heart. He's going to come live in the heart. And then he's going to write his laws on the heart. That's like giving you the desire to actually do it. So he's going to put the desire to obey in the heart. Oops. So he's actually going to do it for us. And the result is, if you want to use a New Testament term, sanctification. Which means process of becoming holy. So that is what our story is about. How does this information get spread to the world so that this can happen? That's what the New Testament is about. So I kind of love that. That overview as I dive into the New Testament. We'll go, and I'm going to go through all these details of this and that and this and that. I want to keep in my mind that the whole point of it is to save the world and to give us a process to get out of this and into this. And that's what the filling of the Holy Spirit does. So we spent time on what the Holy Spirit does and all these things, because this is our foundation for, and you can even see it with Peter. So here comes the day of Pentecost. Peter has promised Jesus his life, and within 6 hours denies him because he gets scared to death. Okay, so there's no way he can do it, right? And then he's just crushed. So now he's down here in the bottom because he's just crushed because he can't, he denied his Lord, and he's in it. He's in it 100%. He's all in. He was all in at the Last Supper. He was all in, and still he couldn't do it. So that tells us, how many times have I been all in, and then within 2 hours screwed up royally, or said something stupid, or hurt someone's feelings, or I go, what? It was just 2 hours ago. So I get that. And then Jesus takes him aside at the Sea of Galilee, and he does this very intimate restoration and reconciliation between not just Peter as a person, but between his heart and his soul and Jesus' heart and Jesus' soul. So that it wasn't just like, okay, you're not rejected type thing. This was, let's get in close again. So that's what he does. And so Peter is still all in, and they're sitting in that room, and it might very well be the very same room that they had the Last Supper in. And Jesus has already been crucified, he's already risen, and they're sitting there. He's walked around for 40 days, he's already ascended into heaven, and they're supposed to go wait. And I tell you, that's got to be the longest 10 days. You had 120 people sitting in a room, waiting. Picture all of us, plus kids, the husbands, the whatevers, and we're in the room, and we're sitting waiting. And then it's the next day, and the next day, and the next day, and we're sitting and waiting. And you gotta know they're looking at Peter going, he said to wait. Okay, we're waiting. I want to feel it. And then all of a sudden, there is no wind. There is only sound. It's the sound of a wind. And it's the sound of a wind that is so huge. It's like the sound of a tornado or the sound of a hurricane. If you had the sound of a huge wind in our room, would it be loud enough to draw in the city to try to figure out what's going on in our room? Can you imagine the people in Sutter Creek going, I hear this noise. I gotta go find out what that is. Can you imagine that? Can you imagine them even in Jackson? If they were down at Costless or over at Grocery Outlet, and they go, man, I gotta drop what I'm doing. I gotta go find out what's going on because there's this huge noise. And so I feel like I tend to overlook the impact of just the noise because it draws a crowd. By the way, the crowd is so big, it's got to be a good crowd of 5,000, I'm guessing, because 3,000 believe, and you know that not everybody's going to believe. So 3,000 believe that. So, and that's just all on the streets around the city, and we've been there. Those streets are not that big. I mean, it's got to be crowded. So, and then there's these things and how do you describe fire on your head? I don't know, because I don't know, there were tongues of fire. How would you describe that? We saw this fire, but the really crazy thing was all of a sudden I knew French. I've never learned French in my life. All of a sudden we knew Latin. We knew the language of Egypt. We knew the language of Carthage. We knew. Can you picture it? I mean, and Peter, this is the same Peter who was only 50 days ago, the little freaky, scared to death Peter. stands up in front of that huge crowd and gives the very first gospel message of the New Testament. And 3,000 believe. So that's the beginning of this story. And then, of course, the next days go on, and the next couple years, I think they're in Jerusalem, if I'm going to guess, 2 or 3 years, and they are just like, they're in the temple, they're standing on the portico. The portico is the place where all the pillars are, and it's like on the outside wall of the fence around the courtyard, so that if you stand up there, you're raised up a little bit on a few steps, and there's room for a huge crowd. And he stands up there and he's preaching and preaching and preaching. And one of the things that is very cultural to the Jewish people is that you have to say who is giving you this message. In whose authority are you speaking? In whose name are you speaking? If we went and stood on the street corner in American culture and did a big soapbox thing, that they don't do so much anymore, but pretend, or even on YouTube, nobody asks, who's your authority? They don't. That's not in our culture to ask that question. But in that culture, it was incredibly important that they know, he's speaking because of Gamaliel, because he's the great rabbi, or he's speaking because of Nicodemus, because he's the great rabbi, you see. And so then they would know where this information is coming from. So Peter goes, I am speaking to you in the name of Jesus Christ, whom you just rejected, and whom you just crucified, and who has risen from the dead, and who the Old Testament prophecies talk about. And I'm just like, I don't know that I'd have the boldness to do that. You know, and I'm just very, very proud and impressed with Peter. And then he does something that's very Jewish. He pulls out 3 witnesses. Remember, everything stands on 2 or 3 witnesses? He even pulls out more than that, but he pulls out 3 witnesses, and they are Old Testament prophecies that they know. And he pulls out the prophecy and he goes, see, that tells us what Messiah is going to do. Oh, his body was not going to suffer decay? So he pulls out the psalm that says that. He pulls out the next one. And he pulls, so he's talking to a certain group, and he reaches the group within the realm of their thinking, which is a good lesson for us to learn, because we would not necessarily go to someone who has no idea the Bible and pull up the Old Testament prophecies and say, this proves that Jesus is it. They don't have a clue what we're talking about. When Paul goes to Athens and he speaks up on the Acropolis up there, he does not use any Old Testament prophecies. He actually uses their philosophers. Why? He is talking to their group. And he does I'm ahead of myself now, but so I just thought that was a really good lesson to learn. Learn who you're talking to. If I'm talking to little children, I'm not going to pull up the word sanctification, or justification, or propitiation, or any of those words, because they're all like, can you just say that God is big? I said, okay, God is big, you know. I don't have to say, so you got to know your group. If you're talking to teenagers and you go, God is big, they're going to get, it might be time to use infinite. It might be time to use some bigger words. So you know your group. They go on. Peter says they get tried by they get hauled before the Sanhedrin, because Sanhedrin evidently does not like them. Of course, they are actually accusing the Sanhedrin. Every time he presents Jesus, he accuses the Sanhedrin. They're the one who killed the Messiah. And they stand there and they go, all right, tell us in whose name you're doing this. And he does one of the most well-known verses, and that is Acts 4:12. So go find it. And as soon as you see it, you'll go, oh yes. And it's not only that name, but there is no other name. Yeah, so Pam, read that for me.
Salvation is found in no one else, for there is no other name under heaven given to men by which we must be saved.
And I think just a couple of verses ahead of that, he said that the name was Jesus Christ. Is that right? Okay.
Yeah,
See.
Christ of Nazareth, and
Uh-huh.
crucified.
And and you know why they're always adding Jesus of Nazareth? They haven't identified which Jesus they're talking about.
Yeah.
They need Jesus of Nazareth, and that is a humility thing of Jesus himself. Nazareth was a no place.
Nothing good comes from it.
Nothing good comes from Nazareth. It's a dumpy place. It's a no place. In their minds, this is not a good place. It's not a prestigious place of any kind. Okay, so word spreads, and then there's this guy named Stephen. And Stephen is a Hellenistic Jew. Okay, that means he is a Jew that has grown up in Greek culture. And he probably knows Greek, he probably knows Hebrew, he probably knows Aramaic, and he may even know Latin. The reason I say that is because he's from a Greek culture, here Hellenistic, Hebrew, Latin is the Roman language. I don't know if he knows Latin or not, but he knows these languages, so he's going to be multilingual. And he is speaking, because Jerusalem has more places than just the temple. They have synagogues in Jerusalem, okay? So that there was like local churches, and then there's the big church. And those synagogues were often by nationality. So there's a synagogue in some location in Jerusalem, and I don't know where it is, for the nationality of the people who were from Cilicia and a few others. Cilicia is this area. Okay? So, and by the way, just as a little heads up, Saul of Tarsus happens to be in Jerusalem at this time, and he's a very, very faithful Jew. Where do you think he might be during Sabbath? He's probably right there, and he's getting, and Stephen is speaking so strongly that people cannot refute him. And Saul of Tarsus can speak so strongly that no one can refute him. I can almost picture him. And I think if I was to say, where did Saul get his huge hatred for the way? It might have been right there. Because he stands later and holds the coats so Stephen can be stoned. Right? So why would he have this in him? You know, I suspect there was interaction between Stephen and Saul of Tarsus. And Saul of Tarsus is a fairly young guy, like 20s or 30s, somewhere in there. And he is already at the ranks of joining this Sanhedrin. That's way early. The reason I know he's at the ranks of joining the Sanhedrin is that there is no high priest who would give authority to a person who is not part of the Sanhedrin to go 100, 300, 200 miles away and arrest the enemies of the Jews. Okay, so there's that. So he's involved with the Sanhedrin, and of course Stephen is stoned, and he is thrilled to death that Stephen is stoned. And right then, this horrible thing is one of God's biggest blessings to the church, because that starts the persecution. And you go, wait a minute, what are you saying? How is that a blessing? We've been here for about 3 years, and we need to go. We need to get out. We need to go. It needs to spread. There's a good 5,000, 7,000, 8,000 believers there now. They need to spread. They need to get out. They need to get that word out. Remember Jesus said, Jerusalem, Judea, Samaria, and the ends of the earth? Well, they're still there. until Stephen is, and then it becomes massive. Everybody's threatened to be stoned. And they're calling the group The Way. That's the name of them. They're not called Christians yet. They're called The Way. And it comes from John 14:6. Most likely, I haven't found a direct connection that someone said evidence this, but most likely, I am the way, the truth, and the life. No one comes to the Father but through me. So he is the way. So that's what's going on like that. Okay, so you know I gotta really speed up because I take too long to tell stories. So you know how it spreads. You know that they went into Samaria and they're spreading it all over, and Philip is down there. By the way, this is not Philip the disciple. This is Philip, one of the 7 deacons of the church. So he is a Hellenistic Philip, not a Jewish Philip. And he is down there, and he runs into Simon the magician. You know all that. Remember that story? And then we also have him being transferred down and talking to the Ethiopian. And the Ethiopian reads Isaiah 53, one of my favorite chapters. And he wants to know, what's this about? And Philip tells him, and then they get baptized in the desert. I think that's crazy. God put a pool there, but in the desert, God, there's a pool, let's get baptized. Oh, water, who the fuck? Let's go get baptized. You know? So now, it's going around. And this guy, who is a high-ranking Ethiopian, he's like works next to the king or the prince or whoever that is. He's going to take it down here. So there it goes there. And at Pentecost, we had people from way over here in the Babylonian area, in the Assyrian area, in Syria, in Asia, in Rome. So there has already been, without the disciples doing anything, some expansion all over, okay? Because those people were from there. They were there for Pentecost. They traveled there. They believed at Peter's speech, and it started to go all around. And for the life of me, one time I thought, why did God wait 10 days from the ascension of Jesus to the Pentecost for the Holy Spirit to come? And I go, well, duh, you had to get all those people into Jerusalem first, so otherwise it could go out. If he had done, who would have been there? The crowds wouldn't have been there. So Jerusalem swells at Pentecost from about 600,000, they think, to about 2 million. So that's a huge swell. Well, anyway, we're going on, and in the meantime, Saul, I'm going to say it wrong all the time, is going to get on a mission. And his mission is he is going to, got to get into his head, he is going to defend Yahweh. That's a lie. I'm used to writing it in a different language. He is going to defend Yahweh. And Yahweh is being attacked by this. This is destroying that, because this is not true. This is false information. He's got to defend Yahweh. He thinks he's in the right. This is really important. He thinks he's in the right. He's right over here. He would not be on this mission if he was not. They are destroying our worship of Yahweh. They are saying this man who is a fake is God. And he's not necessarily hating the people individually. He's hating what they believe in. And he's hating what they're spreading. So he gets information, he gets papers from the high priest to go to Damascus. Now this is actually really weird. Damascus is outside his territory. The high priest doesn't have legal right to send papers to a someplace outside their territory to pull jurisdiction, to pull people into jail. He has to cooperate with the leader of the territory that Damascus is in. And that is, just a minute, I got it. And there's some indication later when Paul is being let down out of the basket that this man was indirectly involved in all this stuff. Whoever was that leader, the king Eritreus, I think. Anyway, so he gets that, and on the way, I'm gonna take the break after this. On the way, and he's so driven. This man is not part of the zealots as far as officially, but he is a zealot by the biggest term there could be. And he is determined, and he is right there at the gates of Damascus, and the light hits him. Now you gotta know that in his world, Yahweh is a light. It is the Shekinah glory. It is the light. It is the light that was so bright Moses had to cover his face. It is the light that you cannot look at. It is the light that if you look at it, it will blind you. As a matter of fact, it will kill you. So when he sees this light and he falls down blind, he knows he's talking to Yahweh. And then Yahweh says to him, "Why are you persecuting me?" He goes, and he doesn't have time to answer, but in his brain he's probably going to go, "No, I'm defending you."
Right.
He goes, "No, you're persecuting me." They didn't have that argument, or if they did, it's not written down. And who are you then? And he goes, "I am Jesus who you are persecuting." Can you imagine the explosion that just took place in Saul's mind? No wonder he said, and he's led into Damascus. They know the people of the way know he's coming, and they take him to a man's house named Judas, not Judas Iscariot, another Judas. And this is a Judas who believes. I'm so sorry that he got named that, but can you imagine getting the knock on the door, opening the door, and the guy standing there saying, "Here, this is Saul of Tarsus. Would you keep him in your house?"
Then he can't see.
Talk about the trust and faith of a man that we only hear one time what his name is. He lets him in, and Saul sits there and does not eat or drink or sleep for 3 days. And I can believe it. I bet you he started at the beginning of Torah and started, "Wait a minute, where are you? What have I done wrong? What is in here that I haven't seen?" And he probably walked his way through the entire Old Testament. And chances are he had it close to memorized, because he was that high-ranking in that day. Talk about the flip in that man. And when we come back, I'm going to tell you how God prepared him, and I'm slow. I'm all excited. Anyway, he sits there and he thinks, and God has to completely restructure his faith. And he does. And he becomes the dynamite force of the church age, who wrote most of everything we have left. So take your break, and enjoy thinking about sitting there being hungry while you're eating. I don't know, I bet you he didn't even notice he was hungry. That would be a job. I'm not really. I'm still. I guess.
No problem.
Okay, so where we pick up, let's see. It's being spread to, the gospel is now being spread to the Gentile world, and we have Peter down in doing the in Caesarea, I think it is, and he is going to present the gospel to, now I just have a blank, I know, what's the name of the centurion who believes and has the deal, say, huh? No. I know it, anyway. So that's gonna go, and he's gonna go into his house, and Cornelius, and he's gonna go into his house, and for Peter to walk into Cornelius's house is breaking all the traditional set of rules that the Jews are supposed to accomplish. Now, you gotta understand that there's two sets of rules. There's the rules God made, and then there's the rules man-made to protect the rules God made. So like they put a fence around Torah so that you couldn't get, so in order to protect Torah so perfect, Torah is their word for the Old Testament and God's rules and the law and all that. In order to protect that so well, we put this fence around it and you can't go anywhere near it. Like, that's why you can only walk 37 steps on a Sabbath, because that would be breaking the rule of keeping the Sabbath. So they made these extra rules. And I don't think it's 37, I picked a number out of it, but that you could do so. But Peter was raised in that culture. So to walk into a Gentile's house was breaking all the rules. To eat a meal with them was breaking all the rules. That's why God had to give him the vision. He said, what God has made clean, stop considering unclean. And that, as hard as it was for Saul to see the light, that was almost as hard for Peter to go, really? I'm going to walk into a Gentile's house and sit down at their table and eat food that I have no idea if it's kosher or not? I mean, and I won't go to hell? You know, I mean, that's kind of like, and if we were thinking of it like losing our salvation over something, we would be very, very, very concerned. So, not that you can lose your salvation, I'm trying to make a comparison. Sure. So, anyway, so that is all going on, and in the meantime, there is a group of people in Antioch that are starting to form a church. And that is a very Gentile city, a very Greek city. It's up in Syria. And, just a little note. I heard somewhere that in this area of Syria, which is this area right here, between the year 2000 and maybe 2012 or something, Open Doors estimated that missionary thing, that 900,000 Christians were killed. That's current history. I'm just trying to orient our minds to the difficulties of some of this, and that's just in that area. And that's in the area of Syria. Today, if you were on a tour of the Middle East, you would not go to Damascus. That's not a safe place. That is right on the other side of the border of northern Israel. Well, it's farther up than that, but it's not a safe place to go, and you wouldn't travel there. Turkey still is, but Syria is not. And this right here, I always just think it's funny how what happens over time. Antioch becomes the center of the missionary church. Way, way, way more than Jerusalem. Antioch becomes the center missionary church. It is the main church that Paul leaves from and goes out of. It's the big one at the time, and it's mostly Gentiles. It's got Jews and Gentiles mixed, and they are learning how to do this. And this is not an easy culture exchange for them. Okay, it is easier for the Gentiles to accept the Jews than it is for the Jews to accept the Gentiles. So here the religious group that has had God in the Bible is the harder one to deal with than the wild Greek pagan group. Okay? interesting thing. So that goes on between the time of Paul's first missionary journey and the time he saw the light in Damascus and his first missionary journey. He has several things. It says that he spends 3 years in the desert in Arabia. Some people think that's down at Mount Sinai. Some people think that's farther over the Arabian Peninsula. Some people think that's just a general term for anywhere on this side that's desert. I don't know where he went. I would like to think that since it's Paul and he's following in like mainly things, he was down on Mount Sinai, right where Moses was, but I don't know that. So that's just like, it's on my list. I have this list. It's a very, very long list. It's going to take the first half of eternity to get through my list, and then God can answer all my questions. And I want to watch the big screen video of how it really happened and what's really going on and how close I got on the stories, and so that's on my list. But so he goes. But Paul was raised in Tarsus. There's several things that God did for him in his childhood to prepare him for this job, for this ministry. One, he's born a Roman citizen. That is so important. Secondly, he is raised in a community that is very, very strong Jewish, so he has that full culture, so he knows that so well. He's also raised in a Greek community. So he knows the Greek very well. He knows the philosophies. He knows that training. It's like he had a double education. So he knows that. That is very important. How is he going to be a missionary to the Gentiles, to the Greeks, if he has no idea about the Greeks? That's very, very important. And he is going to go back there and spend about 10 years up in that area that we don't hear anything about. We don't hear if people responded. We don't hear if they didn't respond. I cannot imagine him not spreading the gospel. That's as much as he wanted to stop it, now he wants to spread it. So I cannot imagine him not spreading it, but we don't hear about how they responded. There is one passage in Acts later on where he talks about encouraging the churches of Cilicia. And that's the only thing I heard. That's the only thing I found so far. But I don't know if his family responded. I don't know if anybody in Tarsus responded. I don't know if he was rejected in his own hometown like Jesus was rejected in his own hometown. Here he has flipped, which means that his family's probably rejecting him. The only little clue there is there's one spot at the end of Romans when he says, say hi to Rufus's mother, who is my mother. It's like he has adopted a mother type thing, which is the only clue I've got. I don't know if that's just a kindness or if that's actually a relationship that he considered his mom. I don't know. But my guess is his family rejected him. That's my guess. He did that, and then there's, in the meantime, there's this guy that he knows named Barnabas. And Barnabas, he was down in Jerusalem for a while, and the people in Jerusalem obviously did not want Saul of Tarsus around. If you were Jewish, yeah, great. If you were Christian or of the way, no way, we're not. And so he's trying to walk through Jerusalem, and he's not getting along so well. So Barnabas comes alongside him and takes him to the general assembly of the way, and says, this guy's okay. And they trust Barnabas, so they allow him to go in there. But then there's the second time there has been a plot against his life. I found 4 times that are specific plots against Paul's life, and I'm sure there was a dozen more. But I know of 4 times. Anyway, this would be the second time. The first one was the basket out of Damascus. That's a plot against his life. And they have to ship him out of Jerusalem. So they sneak him out to Caesarea, which is the coast city here where the ships are at, and they send him up to Tarsus, and that's when he spends his 10 years in Tarsus. Okay, 10 years have gone by. And this is during the time when Peter's doing his things and Philip is doing his things and all those things are going on and the church is spreading and most of the gospel is going out by the unnamed people who just had to leave because of persecution. So it's mostly just the yous and me's, you know? That's where most of the gospel is going out. But Antioch's getting pretty big. And Barnabas needs help. He goes, I know who to get. So he goes up to Tarsus and he gets Saul and brings him back. And they go back and they teach there for about a year or so. And then they decide they're going to go on a missions trip. First missions trip. I mean, can you imagine putting together a very first missions trip? Martha, you know how to put together a missions trip. It's not easy. It's complicated. And here they are, very first one, brand new territory. It's going to be 3 of us. And we're going to conquer, I don't know, what, a couple 100,000 square miles? I don't know, maybe bigger than that. And so they take off and they go to Crete, which is this little guy. Oh, Cyprus, excuse me. I always mix up those 2 islands. They go to Cyprus, they land over about here somewhere, and they go around here. And they end up meeting, this guy's name is Paulus Sergius, okay. And he is, he's got a specific title, and he is the head guy of Crete. By the way, they worship Aphrodite in Crete, and so you can imagine what that is like. There has been, and I'm going to try to remember to tell you these things. There has been a plaque found with the engraving in the stone of Sergius Paulus, the proconsul of Crete, and the timing is the same timing as this. Mm-hmm. And the names are very specific because proconsul is a specific title only given to a few. So if it's proconsul and Luke records it as proconsul, it's very affirming that the accuracy of Luke, because not everybody was a proconsul. You know, all the different governors all had different names. I tried to figure this out and I got very confused. And so, but they have found that, and they also found that he had relatives in Antioch Pisidia, which is the next place that Paul and Barnabas go. And there was also a plaque that said that his wife's son followed the way. So this was effective work. And so I think that's really neat, especially if you I was asked by a youth, how do I know when I hear all this stuff at school that is coming from my teachers and things that are saying that this is I've actually had one tell me that the teacher told him the Bible's not true, the Bible's not trustworthy, that this is 75 million years old, and they said, I know that's not true, I just don't have answers. And not that you're going to go spew your answers to people, but it's nice to know in your own brain that things have been proven true. And this is one of them. As a matter of fact, I know of 3 people who went out specifically to prove it false and proved it true. One is Sir William Ramsay. I don't know if you've heard of him. He was an archaeologist at the time, at the end of the 19th century. And he went to the Middle East to prove the Bible wrong. That was his goal. And when he got there, and after 15 years, whatever it was, he found so many inscriptions that matched the details of the Bible that he found out that, no, it's true. So that's happened. The other ones are, I know them until I stand in front of you.
There's Lee Strobel.
Lee Strobel, and then the other guy who did the same thing about 20 years prior to that. But anyway, so they go on this mission. So that's happened at least 3 times. I'm sure it's happened dozens and dozens of times. That there's details like that. So I thought I'd tell you those things. About this time, Caligula dies, and Claudius is, then Caligula is actually Gaius. If you look in real history, Caligula dies. It's probably sooner than that, Caligula dies. And he wanted to put a statue of himself in Jerusalem. And the people in Jerusalem just went mad because this is like Antiochus Epiphanes all over again, and the abomination of desolation, and there's all these problems. Anyway, he ends up dying right at that time, so the statue order got canceled. That was interesting. And Claudius steps in, and Claudius is going to be emperor for quite a while, and things are going to go kind of smoothly under Claudius for a bit. He is going to have one thing that he's going to do. He's going to have a time later on in about 48, 49, I'm thinking, where there's a riot in Rome, and it's about someone named which is pronounced Christos. And they're going crazy, and Christos is the word of a slave, the name of a slave, and it means useful, good, stuff like that, and something happens, and Christos is being shouted all over. And Claudius thinks it's Christos, because he can't understand the shouts of the mobs in the streets. So he throws all the Jews, because he doesn't have a differentiation in his head. And besides that, the way is still under Jewish umbrella at this time. He throws them all out of Rome, which is why Priscilla and Aquila have to leave Rome and end up in Corinth. But, and that is a piece of detail we need to know. The Jewish religion is protected under Roman law. So they have this law, you all have to worship the emperor, you have to do all this, except if you're Jewish. The Jewish religion is protected under Roman law. So as long as the Way is a sect of Judaism, the Way is protected under Jewish law. And they just let it ride like that for a while. Now the Jews did not like that. But that was God's provision for Christianity for quite some time. And so that goes on. Well, anyway, the first missionary journey goes quite well, although John Mark abandons them as they leave Crete and go into this area. And here it is, Antioch Pisidia, and then we're going to go to Iconium, and then we're going to go to Derbe and Lystra and all around here. And Paul's process is to go into a synagogue first, speak to them, and when they throw him out, he will go to the Gentiles. And it happens like that all the time. Well, the Jews in Antioch Pisidia not only threw him out, they chased him to the next town. So by the time he got to the next town, they came up and started a riot there. And then they chased them down to the next town. So he kept doing that. They kept doing that. So they were very, very antagonistic about that. And then, and when he gets down into, I think it's Derbe, he gets stoned, and he lives through that. And that's where you find Timothy. Timothy grew up there. He might have seen all that. He might have heard all that. He probably did because he had a really great mom. And her name is Eunice, and he has a really great grandma. And her name is Lois. And they raise him well, and he becomes very strong in faith because of his mom and his grandma. One of those things you want to hold on to tightly when it's hard being a mom or a grandma. So that's really cool, and I like that. So that, and then you would think they've gone like this. Here's the trip. They've gone from Antioch to here to here. These are all mountains in here. This is a very rough terrain. It's like saying, okay, we're gonna do the hike from Nevada to Missouri. And I'm sorry, you have to cross mountains all along the way. And by the way, they're not Roman roads, they're just local roads, so there's no protection from bandits. So you are on your own, and you're sleeping out there. And it's only about 700 or 800 miles. And you're just walking, carrying your pack. And down in this area, it's filled with mosquitoes. Okay? So, where is their food coming from? Where is their, they are, and later on in 2 Corinthians, when he just talks about the robbers and this and that and times of distress here, he's not exaggerating. It's rough stuff. And so they are now gone through here, they're back over here, and the missionary journey is over. Logic would say, cross the last set of mountains and go home. Besides, these people don't like you so much. That's not what they do. They go back and encourage everyone who believes. And then they sail home. I'm just constantly impressed by Paul. So about that time, they have there's this problem in Antioch. The people up in Jerusalem, you gotta get used to this. If this is higher in altitude, then going like this is up, not south, not down. Took me a long time to get used to that. They're not talking about north and south, up and down. You go up to Jerusalem. It doesn't matter which direction you're coming from. This is up, this is up, this is up, this is up, because Jerusalem's higher. We don't think like that. That's another thing when you read it. Our culture does not think like that. Our culture thinks up as in north and down as in south. Yeah, so if you were going up to Jerusalem, you'd be going this way. If you are going down to Antioch, you're going that way. Okay? When you're reading through it, you're going to go, wait. This doesn't match the map. That's because we're thinking with American culture, not Jewish culture. So these guys, there's a bunch of Jewish believers, or maybe Jewish unbelievers, who have been involved in their church, in the Jewish church, that have gone down to Antioch with a message from their pastor, who happens to be James the Just, James, the brother of Jesus. And we're not even sure if it's really from their pastor or they just said it was, and they were supposed to go up there, and what they're going to do is walk into the church of Antioch and make all the Jews sit on this side and all the Gentiles sit on this side, and they're going to cater it with 2 different restaurants. The kosher restaurant's going to cater this one, and the pagan temples are going to cater this one because that's where they sacrifice the meat for the food. And the 2, there's going to be a long aisle and ropes down the side. And they are not going to cross. And Peter was there at the time. He was up there, and he was before these messengers arrived, and he was doing very well. And everybody is like this. He'd already gotten the sheet with the food on it thing, he was already there, and he was doing very, very well. And then these guys show up, and this is quote, and I can't find where it's really from James, or they just say it's from James, and that he's got orders that this has to happen. And so Peter complies. Okay, now when Paul, he's now called Paul, by the way, when Paul sees that Peter complies, he does not yell at the messengers. He takes Peter he makes them go between the two ropes. I'm making up this part, because it doesn't talk anything about ropes, and it doesn't talk anything about catering.
I'm hearing about it.
I'm making this up, but I'm trying to lay the picture as we would see it, okay? He makes Peter stand between the two ropes down at the end of the aisle, and here's Paul standing at this aisle, and there's that group, and there's that group, and Paul doesn't need a megaphone. And he chews Peter out. And he says, here you are, a Jew, acting like a Gentile, but you're going to make the Gentiles act like Jews? So this huge thing happens. This is all very important, because what the result of this is, and Peter is wrong and he knows it, and he repents, and he makes good relationship with Paul again. And Paul is not wrong to chew him out. This is what you call church discipline, and it was, you just got to know Paul's personality. It was strong, but it was also love, because that's who he is. And Peter knows this, and he knows he's wrong. And so when you know you're wrong and you get chewed out, it's different than when you think you're right and you got chewed out. And he knows he's wrong. So they then take those other guys with the message, and Peter and all these people go down, go up to Jerusalem, and they have a big conference. And at that conference, they are going to cover two questions. One, can Gentiles even be saved? And if they can, do they have to become Jewish first? That, by meaning that, do they have to be circumcised? Do they have to follow all the eating rules? Do they have to become kosher? Do they have to wear tassels on their clothes? Do they have to not walk on Sabbath? Do they have to become Jewish first so that then they can believe in Jesus the Messiah? And as they go through this, the conclusion, and James, the reason I kind of think James didn't really send that letter is because James makes the final statement. No, they do not. This is what we want them to do. We want them to please stay out of the fornication worship of the idol temples, since that was their common, normal life. And you've got to realize, we would look at that as somewhat illegal, even though our laws don't necessarily say that. We would look at that as wrong, somewhat illegal to have an orgy in public, and probably our police would come and stop the publicness of it. And so it was not wrong there. So their whole frame of reference, remember, you make your own rules, it was not wrong. So you're moving them out of the culture, and that's hard for them. So they make this rule: don't do that, don't eat meat sacrificed to idols, don't do, and a couple other things like that, okay? But it's just believe in Jesus Christ. This is a huge statement. It's going to affect the Jews for the rest of the history, and it's going to affect the Gentiles for the rest of the history, and it's right on. And it's just beautiful. So they go out from there. About that time, or maybe a little bit for it, James writes James. Just want you to know, if you want to say the books in the New Testament in order, don't start with Matthew. Start with James. So to say them in order is a little bit different. In time order, James, Galatians, 1 Corinthians, 2 Corinthians, Romans, I got it wrong. James, Galatians, 1st, 2nd Thessalonians, 2nd Thessalonians, 1 Corinthians, 2 Corinthians, Romans, and on and on. That would be saying it in order as they were written. So that's a little different. So you got to think it out. And so then they go back. We do. I'm trying to get to where we left off. So we go. Everything disperses. They go back to Antioch, and they take Titus with them, or is it Silas? Might be Silas. So they go back there, and I think it's Silas. They take Silas with them. And they go back to Antioch, and they teach there for a couple years, and then they decide to do another missionary journey. And so Paul and Barnabas get together, and Barnabas wants to bring John Mark. And of course, Paul, in his very strong determined personality says, no way, Jose on John Mark. He abandoned us last time, he's not coming this time. And Barnabas, who's very loving and comforting, and that's what his name means, wants to include him again, and that does not work, and they separate. And I thought, you know, God, I'm glad that you can use broken people and still make your plan work. Because Barnabas ends up going to Crete and stays there, and tradition says that he had a huge ministry there, and it was eventually, do you remember the magician who did the thing with the guy at Crete, and Paul calls him out? There's 2 magicians in the story so far, there'll be more, but this guy was named Bar Jesus, meaning son of Jesus, and Barnabas' name is son of encouragement. And so the tradition says that Bar Jesus attacked, around 51, I think, attacked Barnabas and killed him. And John Mark stepped up and took over and had him buried. And since then, there is a big Orthodox chapel church there, and Crete is now an Orthodox Christian to this day, and Barnabas is their patron saint.
Cyprus?
Cyprus, yes.
Okay.
I'm sorry, I'm Crete.
Cyprus?
I'm mixing Crete and Cyprus. This is Cyprus, not Crete. We're not at Crete. We'll be there later, but we're not there now. I do that in my head all the time, so forgive me, we are at Cyprus. Yes. I should go like this. 2 syllables first, 1 syllable later. I gotta play stupid games like that or I can't remember things. So that's what happens with there. Now, we're on our second journey. And this time we've got Paul and Silas. And they are going to, his plan is to hit some of these more northern areas and hit Asia. Okay? So if you were to walk from Antioch to the coast, it would be like saying, we are going to take a walk and we are going to leave Jackson and we are going to cross the Mississippi. Okay? And there's the mountains in between, and that's the size of this journey. So they take off and they go up. They have to cross mountains more than once. They got to cross the Sierra Nevada, and then they got to cross the Rocky Mountains, and then they got to go through the desert, and then they got to, you know, the whole thing, right? There's mountains here, there's mountains here, there's all kinds of stuff here. And they are going to go on this walk. So Paul and Silas take off, and Silas, by the way, is Jewish and also a Roman citizen, which is why when they both get beaten in Philippi, both of them are in jail illegally, because they cannot do that to Roman citizens. So they pick up, right about here, they pick up Timothy. Okay, so now watch the journey. Pretend this is a long, long journey, all right? I don't know how long it would take to cross the Mississippi on foot, but let's say it takes us 3 months. They probably traveled 30, 40 miles a day, and that's climbing the stuff, because they are in better shape than me. All right, so they go up here. They're visiting the churches, whatever ones there are. This is the one place where it says there might be churches. The churches listed this. That's the only place I found. They pick up Timothy, and they go up here, and they want to go up into Asia. So consider this day after day after day, week after week after week. They get over here, and God says, no, don't go there. Wait a minute, God. I'm in Missouri. I have walked from California. Are you telling me that my trip is wrong and I can't go to Missouri? I'll go back to Kansas. Nope, don't go to Kansas. Okay, I'll go up north to Nebraska. No, don't go there. I'll go over here, down over here, and we'll hit up Arkansas. Nope, don't go there. how would you feel if you were on a missions trip like that? And you were walking and walking and walking and walking, and everywhere you went, God said no. I go, so I think maybe I'm not supposed to be on this mission trip, right? Okay, they get over here, right there. They're at the end. There's no place left to go. Can they go down here? No. Can they go up here? No. All right, what now, God? Here we are. We're right here. We're at the Aegean. There's water. Do I swim? Do I go back? And all of a sudden, Paul has a dream. And the dream says, come across over to here, or come across over to here. Cross the river and go over here. And in his mind, I'm almost thinking, whoa, you want me to go to Europe? I thought I was supposed to go to Asia. This is Asia, by the way. This is not Asia over there. This is Asia. I thought I was supposed to go to Asia. No, I want you to go to Europe. That's a bigger place, God. Nobody's over there. I mean, nobody has gone there. As no well, you know. So, all right. Picks up Luke. And that name of that place. I know these places. It happens only when you stand in front of people. Okay. Troas. Yes. Picks up Luke and Troas because all of a sudden Acts becomes we and not they. So that's where your clue for that is. So he picks up Luke and they go over here and they have to land on the island. They get a ship, they land on an island, they go a couple places, and they end up in Philippi. And there is no Jewish community in Philippi. Or if there is one, it's so small that they don't have 10 men. You have to have 10 men to have a synagogue. There's no synagogue there. So if there's anybody else, they have to meet outside unofficially. And that's what the women are doing. So evidently there's some Jewish women there, and they are meeting down at the river. And one of them is Lydia. And Lydia is from, she's over here from, what, Thyatira. See, I got that one. Yeah. And she is a seller of purple. By the time we get near the end of this series, and we're doing the churches of Revelation, we'll go through Thyatira and we'll see what amazing purple they're famous for there. But there's been a plaque found in Philippi that talks about how that purple business was transferred to Philippi. And it doesn't mention Lydia, but it does mention that they had this purple business. I thought, really? So Paul meets with them there. And then you know the story. There's the slave girl who's demon possessed, and she's talking, and Paul's walking, and she goes, those are servants of the Most High God, servants of, and I'm not sure if she says Jesus Christ or not, but she might. And so they do this. Or he's teaching you to believe in Jesus Christ. I mean, she is basically presenting the gospel. But it's coming out of the mouth of a demon. And Paul doesn't like that. And so he, after days and days, he's very patient. This doesn't happen the first day. He frees that girl from that horrible thing. And then, of course, her owners, who are making big bucks, are very mad at Paul, and they haul him in and they beat up Paul and Silas. I'm not sure where Timothy is at the moment, or Luke is, or did they stay back at the river with the ladies? I'm not sure, but they are not in the beating up.
That was